Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today, we have Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. We're in a little bit of a weird situation, but I think we'll make do.
Right, very busy days and weeks, and there's very busy days for our president. He stays busy, and I was just contemplating and thinking, he is a powerful person. There is no doubt about it. And he has a tendency to intimidate people. So he has a lot of clout, which, it's good when a person is promoting libertarian ideas. We get excited, and he does on occasion. We get excited about that. But other times, things happen that aren't exactly libertarian. There was a headline, Daniel, that we looked at today from Zero Hedge. Oil rips as Trump reduces Russia's 50-day deadline for peace deal with Ukraine. And in the old days, let's say Biden said that. who who would care? Who would say anything? Probably not much of anything. But that's a different story at this moment. So who? But what had happened? Since this morning we woke up, we found out that he went and changed the deadline. Well, where did he get all this power to give this deadlines? I don't think that's what the founders intended when they acknowledged that tariffs were permissible. Tariffs now, any old time for political reasons, whatever, and then also sanctions is a very, very powerful power going on. Fortunately, right now, things are going along superficially very calmly, but underneath it's very bad because each of these things that are going on, and we've talked about this endlessly, it's all costing money. When we're involved overseas and involved with Ukraine, we help to start it, and then all of a sudden Ukraine comes up at this late stage when they're losing the war. All of a sudden they're really able to hit Russia on occasion, and at least symbolically, it looks, how are they getting away with it? Well, they have money. They didn't earn the money. They're totally broke. There's been rumors that Lazinski has parked a little bit of that cash in a corner someplace that in case he needs it, he's going to use it. But that to me is something. So the threat was for all Russia from Trump. He says, if you don't do it, well, I've given you 50 days. You haven't done anything yet. It's only his fourth days now. So if you don't do it real fast now, in 10 days, we're going to come down hard on you. So this to me is a bit of bullying and the kind of thing. I think it's a type of diplomacy which shouldn't be called diplomacy. It's badgering, and it's working. You can't deny that. And I'm glad there could be worse people using this power, but this power is very addicting. And whoever's in it, it was occurring under Biden. There was a lot of power there, and it became political power. And now it's revealing, and I think the Trump administration is doing a good job revealing some of the stuff going on. But some of the other, if we're depending on the intimidation and the use of things like tariffs and sanctions and threats and weaponry and spending huge amounts of money to send to our so-called allies because we know they'll come to our rescue if we ever have a problem. So, Daniel, I think it's sort of messy, and it's right now there's a relative calm going on, but the markets yesterday when Trump changed his mind about how long ago the thing, the one curve that caught my attention was the sharp spike in the oil prices. Guess what? That has to do with what people now traditionally say. Oh, the prices are going to go up. That's right. Ultimately, the reason they go up is because we're printing so much money. But basically, there's incentives to do it immediately. And we saw some excitement yesterday, and there are a lot of reports this week. So we may see some fireworks this week. Daniel.
Yeah, President Trump went over to Scotland to meet with the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and his wife. Interestingly enough, the optics are unusual in this situation because normally Trump would be a guest. He went to the country of the prime minister, but in sort of, I guess, a power flex move, he had Keir Starmer come to one of his golf courses, and there's this visual of Trump stepping down out of the club room of his golf course to welcome the UK Prime Minister in his own country as a guest. So Trump is a host, and the actual host is a guest in his own country. That's the kind of thing we talked about a little bit off camera, Dr. Paul. That's the kind of thing that the Europeans have done. Now we've talked about Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, who went out of his way to kiss Trump's rear end when he was here a couple of weeks ago. And we saw von der Leyen do the same thing over the weekend with this EU deal. This is a pattern. Trump's able to cow European leaders fairly easy, it appears to everyone. But one person he can't cow and bully into doing what he says, and that's obviously President Putin. He told President Putin earlier this month, a couple of weeks ago, you've got 50 days to wind this war down. Trouble's coming. And it just went completely over President Putin's head because it had no effect on their policy. And obviously because Trump misunderstands what's happening with Russia and Ukraine. He has this idea that he swoops in as a peacemaker and he is the mediator, when in fact the United States is arming Ukraine. The US is at war with Russia as well on the side of Ukraine. So you can have it both ways. And the idea that one side, Russia, is winning, and so if Donald Trump tells you to stop fighting, even though you're about to win, you just stop fighting because Donald Trump tells you. Well, the real world doesn't work that way, and it's a wake-up call for Trump. So Trump is smashing, he's pounding sand, he's furious, and he says, okay, you don't have 50 days, now you have 10 to 12 days. And the question is, or what? Or what are you going to do? A lot of people speculate that he's going to put those secondary sanctions, 100% secondary sanctions. And that's when I read about it this morning, Dr. Paul, and we were talking about it, I was wondering what you thought about it, because that would mean that the United States will put a 100% tariff on China and India if they import anything from Russia. These aren't sanctions on Russia. These are actually sanctions on China and India. What kind of an effect do you think that'll have on our economy?
I think it's going to increase the desire to have an alternative currency and undermine the power of the United States and Trump, because it is the control of that reserve currency of the world that makes a big deal. And that's how we've gotten to this point. But, when we talk about this and we talk about Trump, 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 I often think, and I may be biased a bit, but I often think, well, does this involve who's his closest ally? Which is his most important allies? We don't need more money, more weapons. We want to sell our own weapons. We don't even want people competing with us on that. But I would say that the organization or the country that has the most influence, which has sort of shifted over Trump's tour of duty in public life, and that has to do with Israel. Because if Trump is doing this, I don't think he would do all this sharpness without a token approval and a coordination with Israel. How it will have an immediate effect, I don't know. I don't know how they're going to resolve this. But Trump is, in many ways, is a genius at political maneuvering. How he was able to bring the evangelicals together, that's an interesting story too. But this is complex because it's so dangerous, and there's still a lot of weapons out there. And I don't when somebody has any weapons and they bomb or cut somebody. Most of the time I say, oh, I didn't know they were manufacturing these things. I didn't know they had jets. And I go on and on. And I say, wake up. They all come from the military industrial complex. That's a basic incentive for a lot of this stuff going on. But in the meantime, there's a trade war going on too, and that's powerful. And that's worked out to Trump's favor more than most people thought, including myself. But that doesn't mean it's a permanent way of trading. One of these days we run out of steam, and that is and will come. because what happens is even though we're thriving superficially and by the statistics, it's costing us money, whether it's the military assistance or the financial assistance, because the country is bankrupt. And these policies can't continue. But in the meantime, on the Republican side, they seem to be having a little fun and enjoying themselves.
Well, you know, Dr. Paul, it's probably a pretty accurate cliche that places like Walmart that carry a lot of Chinese goods, they do tend to cater to the working classes, the people with limited incomes. What do you think would happen? I mean, if Trump goes ahead and imposes 100% tariffs on anything coming in from China, I just can't imagine what that would do to the economy or to the price of items in places like Walmart that are barely affordable to people right now who are working and struggling with inflation.
Well, it brings on the crisis because prices will go up, and people will say, "See, there's inflation under Trump." But yes, there is because there's deficits and they're monetizing it. But because prices go up with Mickey messing around with tariffs, isn't literally inflation. But prices are going to go up. I imagine I don't follow the car industry much, but they talk about all the sanctions they put on cars. I think car prices are going to go up. Right now, I saw for various reasons, beef prices are going up, and on and on. And so, and there's going to be a lot of things that we don't have the vaguest idea. All I know is every once in a while, when I pay attention to something I own, something I might be wearing, China has a big presence in this country. And if you say 100% tariff, it can't work. I mean, the people will rebel, and they will wake up. So once again, my option to not to get depressed over all this is, the bad news should be made good news because it's going to wake up more people and saying interventionism, whether it's the military intervention or the economic intervention, doesn't go well. And we ought to reassess this because there will be a rebuilding. We will rebuild a society and we have the chaos at some plan. And therefore, it's very important we help people plan to replace the chaos that we're moving into and already experiencing.
And you know, the thing is, Dr. Paul, as bad as the 100% tariffs would be for our economy, those secondary tariffs on India and China and anyone else who did business with Russia, what some people are suggesting is even worse, which is that not only would he do the tariffs, but if President Putin doesn't do what Trump wants in the next 10 to 12 days, that there'll be a green light for deep strikes inside of Russia by NATO, which is, of course, the US, which would definitely bring us back to the brink of World War III, which is just what Biden did. But the other point I wanted to make just quickly, Dr. Paul, that one of the problems is that Trump doesn't understand this conflict. We've said this on and on. And even today with Keir Starmer, he made the absolutely fallacious comment that Russia has lost 1 million troops in this war. That's absolutely not the case. There are no metrics that show that Russia has lost that many people. So if someone is telling you things about this war that are absolutely untrue, and you're taking those on board, that's going to cloud your judgment in a negative way. The other thing that he said when he was meeting with Keir Starmer, and I have a quote right here, he said he was expressing his frustration. I'm so disappointed in Putin, he said. We thought we had settled numerous times, and then President Putin goes out and starts launching rockets into some city like Kiev and kills a lot of people in a nursing home or whatever. You have bodies lying all over the street, he continued. And I say that's not the way to do it. We'll see what happens with that. Well, neither of those things are true. What he's saying is absolutely untrue. It's fabricated either in his mind or maybe it was something fabricated by Keith Kellogg or someone like that close to Trump. But there is no evidence. If we had evidence that Trump was bombing nursing homes in Kiev, we absolutely would see it. If there was evidence of a significant amount of civilians lying dead in the street, we would see images of that. Where we're actually seeing civilians lying dead in the street is Gaza. So Trump is terribly, terribly misinformed about what's going on in Russia. And it's certain that the buck stops with him, but he has very, very bad advisors. And there's a huge danger when all of your decisions are informed by fallacies. You can't make a proper decision. The old saying from the 60s, garbage in, garbage out. And I think that's operative in this situation.
You know, We talk about the deep state, but I still think that, at times people don't pay as much attention. But the deep state is there in spite of all this activity going on, the Trump power and the Russian power and all this. This goes on, but I still think there's a lot of driving factors behind the scenes. And even though Trump is the figurehead of one faction, I think there are still some other powerful forces that are playing games that a lot of people can't anticipate. Maybe they can't even anticipate themselves. But Daniel, your statement earlier, and I realize that we have to move it along, but the statement you made and you brought together the economic concerns that we have and also how that can aggravate the militancy. Well, if they could do this, we have to increase the military power here. And that reminds me of when I was doing the presidential campaign, they explained to the group of candidates we had that, well, we want to do economic policy this week. We don't want to talk about foreign policy. Next week, we're going to talk about foreign policy. We don't want to talk about economic. And there's no way, and you did such a good explanation on why they blend together. They come together. You can't separate them. If you're broke and you're spending trillions of dollars on foreign policy, you have to combine the two. So to me, it's the principle, Daniel, that we talk about, and that's the principle of liberty and what we want to do, with our program. And that is the Ron Paul Institute is designed to promote peace and prosperity. I believe it. We had to start with our Constitution. That we've long lost most of our republic, but still we're alive and well because there's technology now. Although it's very dangerous, some of it, it's very helpful to some of us who would like to spread this message, Daniel.
Yeah, I'm going to close out, Dr. Paul, with an incredibly exciting announcement. I literally just got done sending a group of emails back and forth, and it's the announcement of the latest speaker at the Ron Paul Institute conference. This is a late announcement. This individual has an extremely busy schedule, and it was very difficult for him to accommodate us, but he is such a generous person that he's really moving things around. I'm talking, of course, about one of the most important intellectuals of our time, and that's Professor Jeffrey Sachs. Professor Jeffrey Sachs will be joining us, the Ron Paul Institute, at our Blueprint for Peace conference on August 16th. If you have any questions about what Professor Sachs is all about, you can find his videos throughout the internet. He's again, as I say, one of the most important thinkers of his time. It's hard for me to remember being this excited. We've had so many terrific speakers, but this to me is up there with the absolute top. People like Professor Mearsheimer, who we had last year. So I'm just so excited that Professor Sachs is going to be there. Get those tickets right now while you still can. See Professor Sachs live in person. Over to you, Dr. Paul.
Very good. And that's a good closing. And I want to thank our viewers for tuning in. And please return to the Liberty Report soon.